Welcome to my real weight loss journey. I'm Richard Greenland, and today we're going to talk about one of the rules that I have and why I have it. The rule is to limit meat and focus on plants and vegetables and whole grains and stuff. And also, kind of going along with that, why don't I just completely eliminate meat instead of limiting it? Go 100% vegan. So it's two separate questions. Let's start first with why do I limit meat? The main reason I limit meat is actually a religious reason. As I've mentioned in a previous video, I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A lot of, also called Mormons. A lot of people know that we don't, drink alcohol, smoke, or use tobacco at all, or even drink coffee or tea. And those are part of what's called the word of wisdom. It's something that has been part of the church since almost since the beginning. It was a really early part of the church, and so with that, even though most people are aware of the drug type parts, in addition to the alcohol, tobacco, coffee, and tea, there's also don't do drugs or anything like that. Any prescription drugs need to be taken as the doctor says. Don't abuse them or anything like that. All that stuff. But in addition to all that, there's also a part of that that isn't necessarily. I guess it's not as strict. Those parts are really strict, and there are actual membership. Membership things that can happen. You can be kicked out and things like that if you're not following those specific rules. Lose privileges, things like that. But there's another part of the word of wisdom that is more of a kind of a health law type of thing that is more up to interpretation. It's more based on what people kind of get out of it. It's just not as strict, and it's not, basically the leaders of the church haven't come out and said specifically, you have to do this, 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 and this. And that part deals more with just living healthy. I tend to interpret it as eat whole grains, eat vegetables, eat fruits, limit meat, eat it very sparingly, and that's, and also exercise and get enough sleep. And so that's my interpretation of it. Other people might interpret it a little bit differently, and that's fine. I'm not judging you or anything like that if you interpret it differently. But that's my interpretation, and so that's one of the main reasons why I've decided to limit my meat. In addition to that, though, even though faith is a very big part of my life and a lot of my decisions are made based on that faith, I'm also a scientist at heart. I'm a public health professional, currently getting my master's degree in public health. And so I'd like there to be scientific evidence for things like this too. And so in this case, there's actually a lot of scientific evidence. The scientific consensus right now is definitely the same thing that I just said. Eat lots of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, limit the meat. It's amazing how much evidence there is. On my other YouTube channel, Plain English Public Health, I've actually mentioned a few times different studies that have been done, whether it's the processed meats and the red meats possibly causing cancer, whether it's all the different studies about diets high in vegetables and whole grains, leading to being more healthy or living longer lives. All that, there's a lot of scientific evidence that shows that you should really limit your meat. You should make most of your diet vegetables, fruits, whole grains, things like that, legumes, all those plant-based things. Also, meat is high in saturated fat, at least most of it. A lot of the meat around here or in the world is filled with saturated fat. And there have been tons of studies that show that saturated fat is also not good for us in high quantities. It's fine if we have it in small quantities. In fact, we probably need it in small quantities. But there are other fats that are much better for us. And so, it's better to get those fats instead of the saturated fats that you see a lot of in the meat. So, um, in addition to those two things, my religious beliefs and the scientific evidence, there's one other thing that is a good reason for me as to why I want to limit meat. And it's just the way that I feel when I limit meat. Um, it's hard to explain how I feel, but it just seems kind of like, I don't know, a lighter feeling, um, you know, I guess more energetic. I feel like I'm able to take more stuff on. I don't feel heavy. When I eat too much meat, I tend to feel heavy. And if I eat a lot of meat, the heaviness tends to stay around for a while. Unlike with plant-based foods, you can definitely overeat plant-based foods, and that's still not healthy. But with those, they tend to be digested faster. They tend to go through your system a little bit better. And so for me, even if I overeat with with the plant-based foods, it doesn't seem to stick around as much, and so I still don't feel bad as long. With meat, on the other hand, yeah, it can be a day or two before I start feeling better if I seriously overeat on meat. So that's one of those other reasons. So with all these reasons that I have for limiting meat, why would I ever eat meat? If it's not that healthy or anything like that, why would I go back and eat meat instead of just sticking to being 100% vegan? Well, there's a few reasons for that too. One, I like meat. I grew up with meat. I like the taste. I like the texture. Lots of traditions are in our family with it. And so it's something that I'm used to eating, and so I like to eat it from time to time. Um, that being said, I have found some alternatives to meat that, taste good. In fact, a lot of them taste very similar to certain kinds of meat. And in reality, sometimes I even prefer those alternatives to meat to the actual meat. And in addition to that, there are some dishes that don't require meat to taste good. There's some vegetable type dishes that I love. But there are also cravings that come. And so for me, I like to be able to say, okay, I have a craving. It's not going away even after waiting a little while. I will go ahead and indulge this craving with a small portion of that specific meat that I like. It's nice to be able to say that rather than having to just kind of suffer through it and be like, I can't eat this. I can't eat this. I can't eat this. It just doesn't help. And that works for all cravings pretty much. If you're able to wait a bit, it'll, a lot of times it'll just go away. Otherwise, if you're able to find like an alternative that'll satisfy the craving without actually giving into the actual craving, that can help a lot. Otherwise, just do the craving and just practice portion control. And so that's one reason why I don't go 100% vegan, is because of my like of meat. Another one is the social aspect. My family, my immediate family living with me in my house, they all love meat. And so it's hard to be 100% meat free and still eat with them. And so I tend to eat meat, just, limit the portions and, things like that. Same thing with going to restaurants. Not that we do that much now with COVID-19, but, drive through and stuff like that. A lot of restaurants don't really have good vegan options. Some are starting to, but it's still not very popular. Especially in my area, my community, a lot of people just don't really accept veganism. It's just, meat is what they've grown up with. Meat is what they're going to eat. And so that's one thing there. The social aspect, it's hard to get by without eating meat, especially at holidays. Turkey, ham, whatever else you have. That's very common for holidays, and so it's hard to get through all that. Being 100% vegan. Now, that being said, these first two reasons, me liking meat and the social aspect, those are ones that I could work around. I could work around that if I wanted to take a bit of work, but I could work around it. The third and final reason, though, it's basically the main reason or most important reason why I don't go 100% vegan. And this reason actually makes it so I don't even feel guilty, at eating meat. The other two, I might actually feel guilty if I ate meat, just because I would think, oh, why am I giving into this weakness of liking meat, or the weakness of going with the crowd or something? I could think of it that way. But those first two are valid reasons. It really depends on yourself, what your reasons are, but those are valid reasons. But this third one helps me even more. And that third reason is that meat is not evil. It's not evil. If you happen to believe that we're not supposed to eat meat because, we're not supposed to hurt animals or anything, I can respect that. That's up to you. Go ahead and be vegan if you want. For me, I don't believe that. Religiously, I believe that, animals were put on this earth by God so that we can use them. Not abuse, but actually use them for, food, etc. And so I don't have any problem with that. But also the fact of the matter is there are so many nutrients that are much easier to find in animal products than they are in plant products. In fact, vitamin B12 is one of those that you cannot find in any plant product in quantities large enough to supply our bodies, with a lifetime supply of B12. You would have to eat, the few plants that have it in higher quantities than most, because most plants don't have any B12 at all. There are a few plants that have minuscule amounts, and you would have to be constantly eating that in order to get enough B12 out of it. It just doesn't work. And so you pretty much have to be eating meat or animal products of some sort, eggs, milk, things like that, in order to get B12. Or, like vegans do, you have to take a supplement. B12 is actually created by bacteria, and it just happens to be absorbed into meat, by the animals that are eating those bacteria, and so that's how it gets to us. So the supplements are actually bacteria, and vegans don't consider those animals. I mean, they are a different kingdom, I guess. So, they're fine with eating the supplements made from bacteria, but not the actual meat. For me, it's just a lot easier just to eat the meat to get the B12. In addition to the B12, though, protein, you can definitely get enough protein from plant sources, but you have to be a little more careful about it because most plant sources do not have all the different types of protein, the amino acids that we need to function. And so you have to eat a variety of plant sources or plant foods in order to get the different types of protein that we need. There's a few plant sources that do have all the protein we need, but they're few and far between. Meat, pretty much all meat has all the protein we need and then some. So it's much easier if you just eat meat or any other animal source of food. Also, zinc is one of those things that's also found in much higher quantities in animal products than it is in plant products. Iron is another one of those. You can definitely find iron in plant products, but it's a different type of iron. You've got non-heme iron in plants and heme iron in animals. Heme iron is the type that is most easily absorbed by our bodies. Plus, a lot of the plants with the highest levels of the iron actually have other chemicals in them that make it, or that interfere with the absorption of the iron into our bodies. And so it's just harder. You can get the iron you need from plants, but it just takes more work. And so for me, with all this, all this evidence of all the nutrients and everything, it just makes it easier for me to just eat the meat or other animal products and just limit the quantities, because I don't need a lot of the meat in order to get the B12 and the iron, the protein, all that. And most of that I can get from plant sources anyways. But for me, it just kind of shows me that whether I'm going on the religious side and think that God made us to eat animals because we require those types of nutrients that can only be found there or are more easily found there, or if I'm going on the science side and I say evolution has caused us to grow or to evolve into a type of person that requires the nutrients found in other animals. Either way, it's much easier, and you're more likely to not have nutrition issues if you are eating a limited amount of meat. Of course, if you eat too much meat, you've got nutrition issues the other way, too much fat and things like that. But at least you're not short on the vitamins that you would be getting from animals. So there are pluses and minuses to meat. The main thing here is to use moderation. So I hope that I've been able to throw some light on this subject about meat. One final note is that with meat, there are definitely some exceptions to this, but generally speaking, the list of meat from healthiest to not healthy would go fish and other seafood, and especially the fattier fish with the omega-3s fatty acids. Those are the most healthy. Then you'd go with poultry, your chicken, duck, turkey, stuff like that. Then you would go with your wild game, deer, elk, things like that. Then your domesticated red meat or your livestock, like beef, pork, lamb, things like that. And then after that, you've got your processed meats. The processed meats are the worst because, first off, you've got your processing, which usually adds a ton of sodium. Second, usually the processed meat is made from the cast-off parts of the animals that have a lot more fat and other things in them that just aren't as good for you. So that's a general list of healthy to unhealthy for the meats. Try and stay as much as possible in the healthier range. I typically eat mostly fish and poultry. Every now and then I might have a little bit of pork. I almost never have beef. Rarely I will. Usually it ends up being if we're in a hurry or something and we stop off at a fast food place, I might grab a burger. Usually, though, I go with a chicken sandwich. But still, any of that is fine. Even the beef burgers and all that, even hot dogs or processed meat, they're all fine in moderation. So don't let fear of being too fat or something like that stop you from eating it. But do make sure that you are using moderation and just use wisdom. Use wisdom in the way you eat anything, whether it's meat or other stuff. So I hope that helped everyone and kind of explained why I have that rule. If you have any comments, please go ahead and leave them down below, and go ahead and subscribe and tell your friends and family. Thank you for watching.